people get easily distracted. And I'm gonna give you the reasons why people don't listen. And this is gonna sound mean, but it's the truth. They get bored, right? We live in a society where we have this drug right here. See this drug right here? This drug right here? This is called a dopamine injector. When you look at this phone, you're getting massive doses of dopamine. You everybody know what dopamine is? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that gives you a pleasurable sensation, right? You get instant gratification. You wanna know what the weather's like? Bam. You wanna know what's going on in the world? Bam. You wanna know what your cousin doing? Bam. You wanna know what your lady doing? Bam. Your guy doing? Bam. It's right here.
You know,
right?
God has ordained us to be communal beings, communal beings. We're not supposed to be islands to ourselves. We're not supposed to be separate from everyone else. We need relationships to thrive. You know, I like a saying I heard before. They say it takes two of us to know one of us. That's why it's not good for you to be alone, because when you're by yourself, when you're isolated, when you're not in community, when you have no family, you have no relationships, you have no connection, you don't really know yourself.
The reason for that is because by nature, we do not like to follow rules. So most people, I can't find a good guy, I can't find a good girl, blah, 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 blah. So what they're really saying, I'm not willing to go through the right process. I'm not willing to follow the right or correct rules. So when that happens, they go back at it of doing it their way again. They get exhausted.
You know, one of the biggest reasons why men objectify women sometimes is the way we were raised. You know, a lot of us are raised in chauvinist environments, and this is something that we have to consciously move away from. You see, a lot of us are more honoring towards the culture that we came up in, and we're not honoring God's word. I had to learn this. I had to learn how to put what God says is the correct way to operate above my culture.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Welcome. So glad you could join us here tonight. Tonight is day 15. Can you believe that, Tracy?
15 days.
Wow, this is incredible. Day 15, we have been coming to you live every night at 8 o'clock, sharing with you the 21-day couples challenge. And we are so excited. This has been a lot of fun. We hope the feedback we've been getting from people has been powerful.
Yeah, tremendous.
And we are just, tremendous. And we're just so blessed. And again, if you are new to this, if you've been with us, then you know what this is. But if you're new to us, first of all, my name is Lou Humphreys.
And I'm Tracy Humphreys.
And we are the Marriage Mechanics. And what we have done is we've written a book. We've written a book called the 21-Day Couples Challenge. And the reason we wrote this book is because so many people are around a lot of negativity. And because they're around that negativity, they start to develop negative habits, and they put those negative habits in their relationships, in their thoughts, their actions, their deeds. And we wanted a counterbalance. We said, what if we could help people infuse positive words and affirmations into their relationships? What would that do for their relationships? So we wrote a book. And the book was called the 21-Day Couple Challenge. And what we did is we challenged couples every day for 21 days straight to infuse a specific word, a word or a phrase that we've carefully selected and prayed over that will add value to your relationship. Now, we've done 14 so far, so we're up to the 15th one.
Yes.
And the word for today is cultivate.
Yes.
Cultivate.
Yes.
Absolutely powerful. So
we want to say hi, Kelsey. Welcome. He was just on the previous live with you. And
I was on a
Kevin
previous
and
live.
Joel
Sure.
and Darnell.
And
Yeah.
Kelsey, how you doing? Good to see you. Glad you're always so supportive. We appreciate you.
Yes.
And let's dive in, babe, because this is a powerful word, and it's a word that I think is very important because, and if you notice, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of our words are almost similar. You'll start to see a pattern of words that are pretty similar, but each one has a distinct twist, a little bit different. And that's the distinction that we want to highlight, because it's not all the same, because it's important for you to understand that these words can add real meaningful value to your relationship. So you want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, one of the things I think about when we talk about cultivate is a garden, right?
Mhm.
So when you think about cultivating anything, you think about going in your backyard, having a garden,
Mhm.
and you sow seeds and you put the fertilizer and you kind of till the soil,
Right.
and you keep watering it and fertilizing it until it grows into a beautiful plant.
Mm.
Whether that plant could be roses, like beautiful flowers, or it could be food, it could be vegetables or fruit or whatever. But when I think about cultivate, that's what came to mind.
Mm.
And one of the things that we have to also do when we're cultivating is removing the weeds.
Mm.
The weeds are the negativity. The weeds are in your marriage is anger and frustration and offense. The weeds are lies and pretense. The weeds are, not trusting. And so you want to regularly, uproot.
Yeah, for sure.
And dig up the weeds out of your marriage. That's a part of cultivating a strong, long-lasting marriage.
Mm.
And so what are some of the components of when you want to cultivate something is, one of the things is, consistently having good communication,
Mhm.
consistently expressing gratitude towards one another. You want to consistently spend quality times, have good conversations, deep conversations, regularly checking in with each other. Each component of what we've been talking about for the past 15 days may even seem repetitive. But I believe that every time you hear something over and over and over again,
Mhm.
what will happen is eventually it will stick and it will become a natural part of what it is that you do on a daily basis. And so cultivating your marriage is powerful. In the previous live that you guys were talking, you guys made some very powerful points, things that Pastor Kevin said, things that Joel and Darnell and that you said, really was all about cultivating how we, even as women, need to support and encourage our husbands in their growth. And as a helpmeet, when you see a need in your husband, it's important for us to speak life into him, life into you, like, and we'll use the conference as a frame of reference, where I was like, babe, you talking about this conference, it's time for it, do it. Like, let's do it. You have my support, you have my help. And I encouraged him in that, and in many other things. And my husband, certain things that I've accomplished, it was because he encouraged me and he spoke life into me, and he was the one who was like, babe, you can do this, you got this.
Mhm.
And so cultivating your marriage is critical. You need to be doing that every chance that you get. Hello, Rosanna, welcome.
Hey, Rosanna, how are you?
So that's what I want to share for now. I mean, I have more.
Well, babe, I love the analogy of the garden, because it's important, and sometimes that'll help us look at things in a different perspective. So I'm going to take some of what you said. You said things like communication, You said things like, well, you didn't say it, but shared activities, intimacy, whether they be emotional intimacy or even physical intimacy. All of those things are seeds. Those are seeds that you plant inside of your relationship, right? Then after you plant the seed, then you want to water it. So the watering, or when you set boundaries, that's when you do something called active listening. Now I want to park it on active listening because so many of us love to talk, and I'm guilty. I love to talk. And when you talk, you want to get your point across. Or if you're listening when someone else is talking, you're listening, but you're not really listening to understand. You're listening to respond. So you're listening, but it's really like, okay, are you finished? Are you finished? Are you finished? So I can speak. Active listening is when you are literally listening to what that person says and you're saying, okay, so I understand you correctly. Is this what you're saying? Because I interpreted what you said as this, this, and this. Is that correct? Okay, finish. And you really digest what the other person is saying. Because sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, in a relationship, and we spoke about this the other day, you can get comfortable with someone that you've been around for many years, or you guys have shared a lot of things. You almost feel like, oh, I already know what you're going to say before they say it. But sometimes active listening can really water your relationship, because if there's nobody else, my spouse is going to listen to me, and they're going to listen not just they're not going to do me a favor by listening. They're going to listen with interest and listen actively with intention.
And sometimes when your spouse is speaking to you, you have this thing, and you'll be like, yep, yeah, I hear you. No, I'm listening.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, you're scrolling. No, I'm listening. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yes.
For real? Oh, okay. That's not active listening. Active listening is not rolling your eyes and being like, oh.
Yeah.
That's not active listening.
Good point.
That's tuning a person out. Really, what you're doing is tuning them out. So active listening is literally when you're sitting and you're looking your spouse in the face and you're really listening and considering what it is that they're saying. And even in the midst of that, you're saying to yourself, you know what, I really need to maybe encourage my spouse more. Like in your heart, you're really processing what it is that your spouse is saying.
Absolutely.
And so active listening, if we as married people really, really understood the power of active listening and truly practiced it, there will be a lot more happier marriages. Because what happens with a lot of communication is people tuning each other out, not listening. And then, as you said, listening to respond and not listening to get the understanding and the wisdom that you need in order to cultivate good communication and good synergy in your marriage. So we have to be very careful when we're constantly, looking away, being distracted by our cell phone, or not looking at, our spouse is talking to us, but we're doing other things. You're cleaning or you're attending to the kids and just being distracted. You cannot accomplish good communication that way.
Absolutely. And that's why the metaphor for it is in when we're cultivating is watering, because when you actively listen, when you're setting boundaries. Now, what are boundaries? Boundaries are areas you say, okay, you know what? We're going to stay in these things. We're not going to talk to each other like this. We're going to spend this kind of money. We're going to do these things. It's agreed upon. When family comes around, we take priority over family. When we do those things, guess what happens? that waters the relationship. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about was the weeding out. Hold on a second, guys. Let me just get my.
Our dog
Not-
our dog decided to play with his toy while we're on this live.
Sorry.
Excuse us.
Yeah, he's a little extra.
He wanted us to prioritize giving him attention. Excuse us.
Right. So, like I was saying, though, the weeding out process, that's any garden. You plant your seeds, you water it, but then what happens is as it's growing, weeds happen, right? It's just the nature of life. And when those weeds happen, that's how we have to be careful. So what we want to do is we want to root out those weeds. What are those weeds? Tracy mentioned it before. Anger, resentment, unforgiveness, maybe some offense, negative cultural norms. Now that's a sensitive one, but negative cultural norms. So many people that we talk to or that we're around, or even ourselves, that's the way we do it in my culture. That's the way I was raised. That's where I come from. That's how I do it. Now, it's okay to celebrate culture, but if something is negative in culture, and I'll give you an example. My wife and I, we come from a Caribbean background. And in the Caribbean, there's a lot of woven into the culture is a lot of witchcraft, right? But they don't call it witchcraft. They call it small little things. So once they'll say things, superstitious things, or do this, don't do that, or throw salt over here, or do all these things. You might have heard some of them. And here's what happens. That is a negative cultural norm. Now, in your marriage, if you say, hey, listen, we found out about this. Maybe I didn't know before, but now I know. So we in our family, in our relationship, we're not going to do A, B, or C because that's a negative cultural norm. That's setting a boundary for this relationship. Now, the outside world can do it. Your family, friends can do it. But as for us in our house, this is how we do it. That's a way of weeding out those things that can infiltrate your relationship. Here's another one. Now, Tracy and I, we talk a lot about this one. Conflict resolution. If you do not have conflict resolution, that's a weed that will choke and strangle your marriage. Ask yourself this question, how many arguments with family, friends, spouses that have caused you to not speak for months, for days, for weeks, right? How many relationships have been damaged because people don't know how to deal with when they have differences of opinion? Now, if you're in a marriage, it's even more heightened because it's just the two of you. I mean, there might be children involved, but it's in the beginning, it's just the two of you. And if you don't know how to resolve things with each other, what's going to happen? It's going to choke the life out of your garden, which is your marital garden. And these are the reasons why we want you to be able to infuse that word cultivate in there, because if you think to yourself, man, I need to be cultivating my marriage. You know, Tracy and I, one of the things that we do, we spoke about this during the giving aspect, but you should be thinking in your, what can I do? How can I cultivate? How can I please my spouse? How can I do something? How can I say something? How can I do something that will infuse positivity, water my garden? How can I water my garden to make my beautiful flower blossom, right? What can I do? Can I maybe buy her a gift? Maybe I can help her with something. Maybe I could pray for her, pray over her. Maybe I could do something that she needs without her asking me for it. Those are things that you can do in your marriage that can help cultivate, not just a good thriving marriage, but a marriage for longevity. Make sense?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I love that. But again, some of the things that we can do to cultivate is another thing is adaptability, being willing to adjust and compromise with life situations.
Mhm.
As you grow in your marriage, the longer that you're together, you're going to be confronted with situations and circumstances that may be difficult. And once you have good communication, once you have that bond, a very close bond with each other, what you're going to find is that when challenges come, it's not so hard because you already have that method of communication in place. You have a level of trust and honesty and transparency with each other. So you'll find that even if some challenging moments come, it's not so hard
Mhm.
because you have cultivated an environment
Yes.
of trust, an environment of good communication, an environment of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
And so another big one with cultivating regular forgiveness, just being very forgiving.
Good one.
Be an aggressive forgiver. If your husband or your wife says something that was hurtful or something that was just rude or something that made you feel, a little icky, I believe it's in those moments that you have to give them grace. You think about how God has given you a lot of grace, how God has forgiven you. There's so many marriages where there's a lot of unforgiveness, a lot of resentment that's been pent up for years. And so it's very important for you to get away from the unforgiveness factor and really get to a place where you forgive your spouse. Now, there's another side to that. If your spouse is constantly doing things that really hurts you, constantly doing things that breaks you, that's another situation. That's when you need some counseling, you need some intervention.
Because that's
But-
a weed.
Oh, that's more than a weed. That's some ivy that has taken over. Ivy, I don't know if you all have ever had it in your garden. That stuff is very hard to get rid of. It just spreads everywhere.
Mhm.
But that's a different situation if you're a married couple where you are constantly being hurt, you're hurting each other, there's constant infidelity or constant lying, constant hiding and secrecy. Those things need intervention, spiritual intervention, counseling intervention. But I'm talking about just the day to day. You have little idiosyncratic things that you might do that might just, offend each other a little bit. That's when you need to cultivate and sit down and cultivate an environment of active listening and being responsive to one another when each other are talking, because sometimes what couples do a lot is tune each other out.
Yes.
Tune each other out. And I can tell you one way that you'll know if your spouse is tuning you out. Y'all want to know? Ask them to repeat what you just said.
That's good.
Right? Ask them.
That's the truth,
say,
man.
you know what, babe? Why don't you go ahead and tell me what it is that I just shared with you? Repeat to me, especially if they tend to be a little distracted and they're always on their cell phone or they're paying attention to everything else. Have them repeat what you just said, and you will know whether they're active listeners or not.
Well, Daily Bread says, what if the person doesn't want to get help and lies all the time?
You need intervention.
Right.
You need spiritual intervention and professional intervention, definitely, because that's another type of situation going on. I highly recommend counseling. And if the person, because one of the things I've been hearing a lot is, you have one spouse saying, I'll go get counseling. And then you have the other spouse that's like, I don't need counseling. I'm good. Right. So if you have a situation like that, I would say the person who's experiencing it, go get help for yourself. But then also, you're going to have to pray. If you're a believer, you're going to have to pray and intercede for your spouse, that God will soften their heart, convict their heart to get help. And to kind of join forces with you to heal the marriage. Sometimes, when you're dealing with lying and adultery and things like that, that's another realm. That's not something that you can just sit and say, let's have a conversation. Because in situations like that, sometimes, let's be honest and real, the person has just left the marriage or left the relationship. Remnants of them are still there. But when they start to commit adultery and they're lying and there's a lot of secrecy, there's something seriously challenged in the relationship.
She said they have committed adultery.
Yeah.
So clearly, Daily Bread, that you guys need some professional intervention. And here's the thing, and this is the rough part about these kind of situations, is that something has to be done. Because if it stays the way it is, then nothing is going to get resolved. As a matter of fact, it's just going to get worse. So the intervention is what will help. And I'll give you a personal account from Tracy and myself. We were having challenges in our marriage in year 15. A lot of the weeds were infiltrating our marriage. And what we did, instead of rooting them out and fixing them while they were happening, we just chose to ignore it. We just kept moving. We just kept planting, sweeping it under the rug. We'd plant a few new seeds. We'd water it, but we really weren't watering it that well. And the weeds just started to overtake. And what happened, because we didn't do anything about it, we separated, and we were this close to being divorced and not coming back. And the thing that we learned after the fact, after we got back together, is that we had to seek help, professional help, spiritual help. And then we committed to working with each other. And when we got the professional help, the pastor who was helping us, he happened to be a licensed counselor as well. He really shared with us where we were, lacking. And he gave us things from a Christian perspective, but also from the natural as well. Gave us books to read and things like that. And here's the thing I can share with you, Daily Bread. You have to start with yourself first. And then you have to approach your spouse and say, hey, listen, this is going in a bad direction. Do you want this? Because here's the thing, and I know this is a very controversial and a rough thing to say, but you can't force someone to stay where they don't want to be. So if there's some remnants of this person after all that adultery and whatever, if the person still desires to be married to you and you desire to have that person as your husband or your spouse, that is the first step. Do you want to be here? Do you want to work this out? Do you want to be here? Like I always say to you guys, everything starts with a decision. And if once you make a decision, something has to die. So the old situation has to die. Okay, we made a decision. We're going to stay together. So if we're going to make this decision to stay together, now we have to actively work on it, which means you can't just make the decision. Oh, I forgive you. Oh, okay, I want to be here. I'm sorry. Now it has to be, okay, you say that. make the decision you want to stay together. Now you have to go seek some counseling, go seek some spiritual counseling as well as natural counseling and deliverance if necessary, because it sounds like that may be necessary in this
Yeah.
situation. So,
And then one of the things that I would say, especially when it comes to adultery, you want to make sure that the changes before you even merge your lives back together, you want to make sure that, you know, you're observing and connecting with the person, yes, meaning coming together, but you want to make sure before you go back in full force into the marriage that the person is truly changed. They've made permanent changes, because if you just go back in and you're not sure whether the person has made permanent changes or not, you're going to fall back into the same trauma, the same pain, and you don't want to put yourself through that kind of crazy cycle. And so I highly recommend, you know, you said, I have started with myself. I don't want to stay anymore. I don't want to deal with the demons because they come to steal, kill, destroy, and I want a blessed life, not a cursed one.
Right.
Okay, well, you have to make, you know, you have made the decision to start with yourself. That's the perfect place to be. Start with you and then work your way from there. From there, if you have if you're in counseling, whether it's through your church or through a professional counselor, that's good. Start with that and just continue to move forward, and continue to pray for your husband, because at the end of the day, that's your spouse, right? You have a covenant with this person, and so you pray for him and ask God to you know, to reveal, give him some revelation, and to also heal him, heal his heart, and to convict his heart to turn his life around. And so it is, you know, my heart goes out to you, Daily Bread. Absolutely. Because, you know, that's a devastating place to be. But the good thing is that you have started working on yourself. And so as you work on yourself, you're going to see that your situation is going to start to, you know, you're there, you may find some peace as you are working on yourself.
And this is the reason why this word cultivate is so important. You guys, you're hearing Daily Bread's story and what she's dealing with. But the real matter is, a lot of times we are reactive to situations. You know, something happens and then how we react to it, instead of being proactive. And what do I mean by that? If I was proactive about cultivating my marriage to my wife in year 13, 12,
11, 10.
Well, let's just pretend like it, you know, because 09 was pretty, year 9 was pretty fire.
Okay.
But the point of the matter was, if at that time when the things started to happen, I was proactive with cultivating the relationship, planting those seeds of communication, intimacy, shared activities, setting up boundaries, active listening, those types of things. If I was doing that with my wife at that time, those weeds that started to infiltrate our marriage would have gotten killed at that point. She wouldn't have had felt the way she felt, because her needs would have been addressed. The things that she was concerned about would have been addressed before she got to the point where she was full and couldn't take it anymore. The things that I was dealing with at the time would have been addressed, and I wouldn't have felt the way I was feeling at the time. And see, this is the thing, whether it's medicine, we live in the West, right? We live in the Western part of the world, and living in the Western part, unfortunately, we are reactive. There's a problem and we deal only with the symptoms. We don't deal with the root causes. And sometimes when you get to the root, that's where you can get the real healing. That's where you can get to the real source of the problem.
Mhm.
And that's the thing that we're trying to share with you guys, because cultivating is something that Tracy and I, we try to do it to ourselves. We try to share it when we counsel people, because it's a very important thing. Because I love the analogy that Tracy gave about it being a garden. And if you picture it as a garden, the more you care for a garden, if any of you guys have plants or have ever grown anything, it requires you got to take care of it. You just can't throw the seed and throw some water and that's it. No, you got to make sure it's getting sunlight. You got to make sure you're watering it. Make sure you spray it with the bug killer if bugs are coming on it. You know, you got to put a fence around it if the rabbits are trying to eat your strawberries like they did to us. Right? We didn't know. We weren't cultivating our garden and the rabbits just ate all of our strawberries. So I'm joking, but this is the seriousness of it. Because once you do it and you care for it, think about, I mean, listen, your spouse, God has entrusted you to your spouse. You know, we read the scriptures yesterday where how a man is supposed to love his wife like Christ loved the church. Women, respect your husbands. Your body is not your own. It's, you know, it's the same thing. So God is entrusting you with this person. He entrusted Tracy to me and me to Tracy. So guess what? We have to be able to cultivate it. And that's why we shared this word. And that's why
And
it's
you
so
know,
strong.
this is why it's so important even for the men to come together. There's a lot of men that come from fatherless environments or environments where they've been so broken. They've never had mentorship. They've never had anyone to model. They've never had anyone to really compliment them and encourage them a certain way and even love them. And so men, a lot of the times, you know, a lot of men get into relationships and things start to go left. You know, we're seeing a lot of infidelity in the church, and it's getting to the point now where it's alarming, the amount of infidelity that we're seeing in the church, the amount of men of God that is falling prey, to their flesh, basically. And so I think that it is important for men to get into environments where they can be cultivated, where they can be watered by other men, encouraged by other men, that, get into an environment where men can fellowship with one another, pour into one another, compliment one another, because we live in a world where men have just kind of, it's almost like I feel like men are receding kind of into the background, like, oh, ladies, y'all got it. So the ladies are out here, they're thriving and they're doing all kinds of things, and the men are just kind of in the corner doing their thing. A lot of men these days are into video games, so they will stay in front of the television for 50 hours a day, just playing video games and just kind of tuning themselves out. But that's not going to help build families. It's not going to help men grow and fulfill the calling, the mandate, the gifts that God has put on their life, And so I truly believe that's also where the women comes in, where we can now help our husbands. We can help them cultivate the vision and the life that God has called them to have and to build. And so it's such a beautiful tapestry, a beautiful mixture when you have married couples come together and work together. And that's why the enemy fights us so hard.
Oh my goodness.
Because it's so beautiful. When two people who love each other come together and they're truly intentional and serious about what God has put in both of them, they're unstoppable.
Yes, indeed.
You're unstoppable as a couple.
Yes.
But the enemy fights, especially when greatness is there, especially when the enemy sees the great potential. He comes to kill, steal, and destroy.
Think about this, guys. Part of the reason why we're we're doing this for married couples to bulletproof your marriage and to really help allow your marriage to thrive is this. Like Tracy said, the enemy hates marriage, dislikes it. Why? Because marriage was something that God created. Marriage is the reflection of the Imago Dei, the in God. And when it's a constant reminder when he sees a man, and remember, the enemy was there when God made man, male and female. He was there when he put them together, and he tried at that point to separate Adam and Eve. At that point. So think about it. He started it way back then because he knows the power of a man and woman coming together, the greatness that they can do. The once the cord, a single cord is weak, but when you add two more, when you add God and your spouse, guess what? Now a tricord is more powerful.
It's not easily
broken, right? And that's why we're sharing these with you, because now this is a way to bulletproof before you get to this situation. When things are good, cultivate even more. Go from good to great. So that way, when the enemy comes, because he will, when things happen, which it will, they're small. They don't gain any traction. The weeds are easily brushed away because you have been watering and cultivating and fertilizing and giving it sunshine and putting a fence around it. The hedge of protection of the angels is around your relationship now. Why? Because you did the work before it got to this point.
You're regularly praying.
Right.
You're regularly doing date nights. You're regularly checking in with one another.
Right.
You're regularly complimenting one another. You're regularly serving one another. And so it's that constant cultivation of your marriage and your relationship. Guess what? No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Because why? That hedge is strong.
Yes.
That hedge of protection is strong. Nothing can penetrate it when you are constantly working on it. And see, one of the things about Cultivate also is when you get knowledge about marriage, study marriage, right?
That's good.
A lot of people get into marriage and they have no idea of what marriage is. If you didn't come from a household where you saw parents who had a healthy marriage, or if you were not around healthy marriages, why don't you want to study it? Why don't you want to read books about what does it mean to have a healthy marriage? You want to study in this area. You know, marriage is something you got to work on it. This thing marriage itself, you can't just leave it on its own. You got to work on it. You got to cultivate it. You got to create an environment that is healthy. You got to have forgiveness, and you got to apologize, and you have to listen to one another, actively listen to one another. You have to check your ego at the door.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what, you know, who is a multimillionaire, who's a boss chick, a boss dude. It doesn't matter what you are on the outside, but when you get on the inside, when you come home to your spouse, you leave all of that outside and you come in, and the two of you are equally yoked together, and you're building whatever it is God has called you to build as a couple. Now, guess what? The two of you are working together, building together. That's why we tell couples all the time, we don't believe in prenup. People have argued with us about that. I don't care what people say. If you put a prenuptial agreement in your relationship, you have just signed a divorce decree, in my opinion. And so in our opinion, we're in agreement with that.
Not only am I in agreement with that, this is the reason why too many people are focused on the wedding and they're not focused on the marriage. See, the wedding is the look. It's the rings, it's the dress, it's the
Venue.
Anticipation, the venue, the emotions, the butterflies, and all those things are wonderful. Those things are great. I enjoy them with my wife, and the anticipation. All those things are wonderful, but that is nothing more than a dopamine high for a little while. The realness comes from the relationship that you build with this other person, this other flawed person, right? They're going to have flaws. You're going to have flaws. And two people coming together to build their life together, build a life together. Like Tracy said, it's not just going to magically happen. You just have, you know what happens with a lot of couples? They get married, the excitement is there, and they're excited, and it's hot, it's a lot of heat. You're having sex every day, 4 times a day. Everything is wonderful. You're going on trips, and you're showing off the ring, and you're Instagramming, and all that is wonderful. But then the excitement dies down a little bit. Maybe in year 4, 5, 6, it dies down a little bit. So then what do you need? You need another dopamine hit. You need another high. So you know what? Let's have some kids, or let's get a house, or let's do something. And you do those things, and that gives you a nice temporary high. And you're looking forward to the children, and you're taking care of the children, and you got the house, and you're looking at the house. Maybe you get a car, get it. Now you went from a little 2-seater. Now you got to get the SUV or the minivan, and you're excited about that. And all of those things are wonderful, but all of those things are symptoms. You're not getting to the root. The root is that maybe you have some bitterness. Maybe there's some trauma in your spouse. Maybe there's some unforgiveness of something. Maybe your view of marriage is skewed because you didn't come from a married household, or a dysfunctional married household, or whatever the case may be. It's important to cultivate these things early in your relationship. One of the things, I mean, and again, I'm sharing this from experience. We made a lot of mistakes, so I'm preventing you guys from making these mistakes. Yeah. Had we done what we're sharing with you, we wouldn't have been separated. We wouldn't have gone through the rough times that we went through. And we're not just talking about ourselves only. We've had countless other married couples tell us the same things. Because the building of the relationship, the cultivation of the relationship is not always as sexy. It's not always as fun and exciting as the Instagrammable moments of marriage. And that's why we wanted to share this. And that's why we're so passionate about it, because guys, if you pay attention to these things and you do these things and you take the 21-day challenge, guess what? It'll become a habit for you to cultivate, for you to encourage, for you to read scripture, for you to apologize, for all those words that we gave you. It'll become normal and easy. Arguments will happen. You go, oh, that's no big deal. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Oh, that's okay, babe.
Well, you know
and then
what?
You move forward.
But what happens is you also recognize when the enemy is present.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So as you are doing all of the things we've been sharing with you, you will immediately know there's a serpent in our house.
That's right.
We got to locate this serpent and we got to kick him out.
Yeah.
And you know, when challenges come in your household, that's when you got to bond together. That's when you got to go closer and tighter. That's not when you start looking at each other and attacking each other, because that's a clear indication that the enemy is working full force in your household. And if you want to see things change in your home, that's when you're fighting and you're arguing, that's when you hold on to each other tighter. That's when you're like, Father, in the name of Jesus, we come against, you start praying. That's when the both of you together, you start banding together and fighting the enemy, not fighting each other.
Right.
And what happens with a lot of couples when the challenges come, it's like, no, you did this, and they finger point, they're pointing fingers, and there's a lot of anger and bad words being thrown at each other. But I promise you, if you guys will start, whenever you start having a lot of challenges and it seems like it comes out of nowhere, there's an enemy in the midst. And that's where the both of you start to do investigation. You start to, search. Did somebody have a bad dream? Is there an open door somewhere? Is there a demonic door that opened in our marriage? Is there something somebody did? Is there a dream we didn't cancel? Is there somebody we connected with? Is there something? Because let me tell y'all something. Even when your eye gate and your ear gate, your eye gate, when you're scrolling social media, that's a dangerous place sometimes, because you bump into some demonic things on social media and you start watching it and you start absorbing it and you start listening to it, or you listen to a song, a demonic song, and all of a sudden that song is playing in your mind, and mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, it can start to affect you and infect you. And it seems so subtle, right? It seems so subtle because many times we don't even suspect these things. And so we have to be so careful, because there's so many portals and demonic things that are happening in the world, that if you are not careful,
yeah,
you're going to bump into some stuff and you won't even be able to find the open door. And then you're just continually being attacked, and you don't know how to, you can't identify where the attack is coming from. So this is where accountability comes in, family. This is where the both of you sit with one another and talk things through and pray over each other, cancel things, shut things down, rebuke things, come out of agreement with things.
Yeah,
you know, it's vital that we're constantly doing these things so that our marriages can heal, our marriage will be whole, our marriage will be healthy and enjoyable. Listen, I believe that we can have heaven on earth. I believe it. I believe it's possible for all of us. I believe that marriages can thrive, but we just have to put in the work.
Put in the work. That's it. And I'm going to leave you guys with this. If you purposely cultivate a habit of encouraging your spouse to be great, they will aspire towards greatness, and your marriage will be heavenly. Now think about that. Think about that. You guys, if you're having some challenges in your relationship or in your marriage, or if you desire to be married, or if you are already married and things are okay, think about how you can cultivate greatness into your spouse, and vice versa. And guess what? You'll now live a life of greatness. You'll now aspire to greatness. And that is the main thing that we want to share. Speaking of greatness, we're going to have the Man Up Conference. It's going to be February 8th and 9th, Edgewater, New Jersey. Tickets are still available. I put the information in the chat. If you are a lady and you're on this call and you know a man, a son, a husband, a brother, an uncle, a grandfather, whomever, send them to this event. Tell them to encourage them to come. Buy a ticket for them if you have to, right? Because this is transformative. I just got off a live prior to this live where I was with the ministers and the people that are going to speak there. Powerful, powerful, powerful men, real men, not phony balonies, men that have been through some things and they have wisdom to share. They're relatable. They're funny. We're going to have a good time. There's going to be food there. There's going to be information. There's going to be networking there. It's going to be a real powerful conference. So I advise you, if you're a man and you're on this live, you want to get your ticket. I put the link in there. If you're a lady, encourage your fellas. If you enjoyed what we're sharing, we also have these books. These things that we're sharing with you guys, they're just tools, right? Again, we're not out here trying to get rich off of this stuff. What we're doing is cultivating the body of Christ with the tools that will help. And that's what it is.
Especially when it comes to marriage.
Absolutely.
So is it possible for me to put on a mustache and a beard and
I'll catch you because you got on that perfume, so I'm gonna catch you. I'm gonna catch you.
And sneak in the room.
No, she can't catch. She can't sneak in. But ladies, you can stay on the outside. You can network with the other ladies on the outside, but inside the conference, it's going to be men only, and that's just I forgot to say that, but yeah, that's going to be how it goes. And
somehow I'm laughing because I'm like, there might be somebody going to try. That's going to try to come in with a mustache and beard and try to act like a dude.
Right. But
honestly, I love what you guys are talking about. I love what Pastor Ewing was talking about, and Darnell and Joel, and what all of you, I'm here with you. So Amen. We have the conversations. I know what the surprises that you're working on in the background. And so I'm excited for everything that is going to take place on February 7th and 8th. And ladies, this is for the ladies. Don't worry. There's something coming for you guys. Trust me, something coming for all the ladies. So just stay tuned. You will hear about it. But so it's going to be exciting. It's an exciting year, and it's a year where I believe that if we're disciplined and focused, and if we apply the Word of God, apply what we're learning, study to show ourselves approved, if we walk by faith and not by sight, walk in holiness, walk in respect, honor, love, walk in righteousness, I'm telling you, this is your year.
You mean 2020 Thrive?
Oh, one of those. No, 2025.
I think it's 2020 Thrive.
But yeah, it's going to be a wonderful year. It doesn't matter what distractions we're seeing. It doesn't matter what comes, because that's life. Life is going to throw us little curveballs here and there. But I'm telling you, if we stay focused, keep our eyes on the Lord, stay focused on the things that God has called us to do, there is nothing that you will not accomplish this year. And so we just have to be in a place of faith, be around the right people. And that's also another reason for this conference. In order for us to really accomplish the things God has called us to do, you want to be around people that's going to hold you accountable. You want to be around people that's going to tell you when you're doing good, but also they're going to hold you accountable when you're kind of off kilter a little bit. They're going to tell you, hey sis, hey bro, you might want to, back it up a little bit. You might want to align yourself back with the Lord, things like that. People that will hold you accountable. Yeah, I've always said this. I don't like a lot of yes people around me. Don't just tell me yes, and I'm about to fall off of a cliff, and you're just yesing me. No, I want to be in an environment where people are going to hold me accountable. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So with that being said, our battery is going. Battery's dying. So with that being said, y'all, we look forward to seeing you guys in Edgewater, New Jersey. And whether we're going to see you there or not, don't worry, because tomorrow we're going to be on day 16, and day 16 is the power to create. We're going to be talking about creativity tomorrow, which is one of my favorite topics. And so, family, God bless you all. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your support. Yes. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your encouragement. And thank you for purchasing our book. May God richly bless.
Thank you, guys. Rosanna. Thank you so much for the support.
Amen. Take care, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
If you want to be heard and you want it to last, you gotta put in work. Forget about your past. With Marriage Mechanic, Marriage Mechanic, Marriage Mechanic.